In this video, show you how to install Windows 2000 on VMware Workstation. First, you need to download the VMware Workstation setup file, then install it on your system, and you need to activate the project. Then you need to download the Windows 2000 virtual machine ISO file, and I'll show you how to install it onto that. First, this quite an easy method to do. Now first you need to open up VMware Workstation. When you open up VMware Workstation, you need to create your virtual machine. And this is quite self-explanatory, as you can see here. And first I would then create my own virtual machine, or typical next. And then also my disk image as a file, Windows 2000. And then click on next. I'll enter my project key. And this is like a borrow for window of when you're running Windows 2000 on your host machine, which calls a computer on a computer mode. And then I would show you how to obtain your project key. I will go to my Windows 2000 project key. It is in my Word document, and this is the project key which I need to enter for this system on. No, I can copy and paste it directly onto the window. Next, when you did that, you type in your name. I'll type in Windows 2000 user. I will also install extended kernel for the Windows 2000 operating system, shown in this video. And when you did that, click on next. Windows 2000 professional, this is the name which I'll need to do. This is going to be installed the new administrator, to my documents, my virtual machines folder, then to virtual machine and virtual hard disk file. Next, and then finish. Once you're done, it's going to be started to install the actual operating system. You don't need to you do not need to press F6 to install third-party drivers. As this is a virtual machine, you do not need to do that, unless you are creating your own ISO file, including a modified ISO file of Windows 2000 which works on newer hardware, I think, but this video is only for installing the operating system onto the virtual machine software. And then once you're done, you will need to just close this off. I want to close this window off as well. It is going to be starting Windows 2000. You do not need to press enter, then enter select the partition, and then enter blah blah blah, even to accept the license agreement. Instead, it automatically installs the operating system, it checks the hard disk and is formatting it, and it's going to be copying the files onto the virtual hard disk. But that's how it is, which is a feature that VirtualBox is not being able to do. And since we're scoping the files, and it should be able to complete the copying to the installation process. All the pause is bit, all this is done doing it. And restart your computer when you're done that. Press enter or let you restart, depending on your restarting method. And it will boot into Windows 2000 boot screen. And when you're doing that, you should be able to see loading bar onto this virtual screen. Virtual machine screen. Next, I would remind me later. I think that you also need to enter the product key if you have already entered that into the virtual machine screen window, because it requires a product key. Store that to allow it to install onto the system. And then when you're in that, this arrow will come up, and this is the Windows 2000 professional setup. It's going to be installing your keyboard and mouse, and the way for it to install this the drivers. And even if the mouse is moving, like my PC is doing one now in the virtual machine screen, it is still installing your keyboard and mouse drivers. Even though USB does not work properly onto this portion of the setup, because it requires you to rely heavily on PS2 ports for the installation to run and the mouse to work as well. But Windows XP and Windows 2000 can have an option to enable USB support. Even though Windows XP, Windows XP Service Pack 1 or Service Pack 2, depending on the SP version, it has USB 1.1 and SP2 and SP3, yes, USB 2.0. But Windows 2000 Auto and defaults only to its range up to USB 1.1 ports. But if you want to install USB 2.0 ports onto this type of setup, the virtual machine, you need to install specific drivers to function for the setup to run, if you plan to use USB 2.0 instead of 1.1 or 1.0. Especially if you have to insert a USB flash drive and to restore your data if you on a USB flash drive. And the screen will flicker, and this is part of the normal installation of Windows 2000. And you will see this is a slightly grey, light grey color scheme like Windows 95 and Windows 98, Windows 3.1 has. But for Windows 3.x has this white roof color, but Windows 95 and 98 has this grey color scheme. But when you look at the Windows 2000 desktop and the context menu, start menu, and other structures of the user interface, even the window borders and pad letters, etc., The color scheme is light beige off white. No, it is a bit pinkish beige. No, it's not pinkish. It is just light beige compared to what we're seeing on it. It is the grey color scheme. And what we will think is that this virtual machine functions a lot much more better, same as with Windows 98 2nd edition. And or this will give you an error code. And now this is the error code if you have unattended setup, and because this is the parameter is specifiable system memory restriction manufacturer is missing or invalid, and you should be able to, and the setup must therefore ask you to provide this information right now. I would click on OK, and now everything is required for a product key. And I would then go back to my ASA files folder, and here we go. I'll go to my okay, and then you go to now clear. Product keys once that's done. And then once you done that, opens maximum this next, and it's going to be installing network components onto this virtual machine. And when you done that, you should be able to install the operating system onto the virtual machine. So hard disk. And if you have a network compatibility, like your or my host PC does, you need to install the network drivers on your PC in order for this to work, which is also required for you to download the RC image and VMware Workstation. If you don't have a network driver, you're not to be able to meet the demands for Windows 2000, as Windows 2000 still needs internet access and network setup, including a dial-up connection, even with that, or network LAN, or it will not work. But it still work, but it will not perfectly work. That's why you should have an Ethernet or dial-up or even a Wi-Fi connection. But I would recommend an Ethernet or dial-up connection instead of a Wi-Fi connection if you have a physical Windows 2000 laptop. But if it can support Wi-Fi, but you still need to use Ethernet if you installed the Ethernet drivers instead of the Wi-Fi, especially if you are not using the laptop on the go. But if you're using the laptop on the go, you must ensure that you install the Wi-Fi drivers first, as it is the most critical for the laptop to function even in a crowded space in public. But though you can create a wired Wi-Fi connection with your personal device, especially if the connection goes down and it does that. But on a virtual machine and your physical PC with connected an Ethernet cable into it, you have no problem at all. Okay? You can use your host and your virtual machine anytime you like. And you can keep working on your Windows 2000 virtual machine and your host PC as well. And that's what the solution is. I also try to think that will Windows 2000 support Wi-Fi or not support Wi-Fi. I have to check it out if that works or not, but I have to still check it out. If it works, then I would show you, but as I don't have a laptop and I don't have a Windows 2000 laptop, still I can still install even a USB dongle onto my laptop. Then I would show you the test of the Wi-Fi performance of how this works. And you will need to click on restart now to restart the system. And you can see here this is now restarting. But sorry for not pausing the video, I didn't mean to because I was talking about what I need to do and what I need to consider while filming this video. But let's go. In my other tutorials, like installing Windows 2000 on VirtualBox, I would pause the installation process instead of talking blah blah blah. But I still need to talk to you about those questions because you just need to consider those before you choose to use your Windows 2000 virtual machine. And especially when you need to consider the Wi-Fi will work or not work on Windows 2000 if you're using a physical laptop running the operating system on the go. But the stuff which I'm talking about is not as relatable for the video. Instead, this video is focused on Windows 2000 on a virtual machine. Now, the start of sound is now being sounded, and this is the Windows installer. And then next is going to be installing VMware tools. There we go, the Windows 2000 welcome screen and etc. will come up. And you'll hear the first introduction of the operating system, even if you are highly skilled to the OS and you know a lot about computers since you grew up with Windows 7 and later. Even with that, you still need to. There we go. The scheme has changed, and this why I need to do this is because of that. You will need to still meet the demands for Windows 2000 welcome screen. Even if you know to use a keyboard and mouse, but this is still more helpful if you was introduced to this operating system before you grew up, but that is the only case. And another reason is that that is the core component of the Windows 2000 operating system. If you remove those, to prove that you are highly skilled in computers and you do not need to learn that again since your childhood. Then the operating system will fail, and no, it will not fail, it will work just perfectly fine, okay? But it will send you an error code, I think. That's why you should leave the Windows 2000 operating system displaying the welcome screen and the balloon tips for the start menu click on. And that is the reason why you should be able to consider being careful when you are using the operating system. And this is the username and the password yourself, if you had one. And this is the Windows 2000 welcome screen. Right, that's good. And we have our distro Windows 2000. And when you click on this, those pictures, you'll look at all of the different pictures, animations, etc., even though they're static. And those are the desktop variations of Windows 2000. And then when you do that, I would change the screen resolution to no, it's too large for my display. Instead, I can use autofill display, no autofill guest, and there we go. This is how it works. And I'll test my own typing test document in Word with Notepad. And then next, this is the operating system that you can choose to. And there we go, this is the Windows 2000 desktop. You can line up icons, button Windows XP, and later I'll show you my desktop. On Windows 2000, you'll click on the lineup icons, that's there, but on my, but on your version of Windows like Windows XP for Windows 11, you can drag the icon back to switches like this, aligned to the grid. Or you can right click and click on arrange icons, then click on align to grid. That's how it works. And the next part we're going to do is I'm going to be installing the extended kernel onto this Windows OS in order to run modern Windows XP applications and up to Windows 7 applications. That's how it is. And that is how it looks like. Now I'll show you the soundscape for the Windows operating system. I'll choose the Windows default. and which is the Windows Utopia sound scheme will test that. And this is how the Windows operating system works. And that's how to install Windows 2000 on Oracle, no, VMware Workstation I mean. But I'll also film a video about installing the OS on Oracle VirtualBox, I think. But anyways, this is how to install the operating system other than shut down the virtual machine. Now, to shut down the virtual machine, even if you know how to do it, click on Start, and you see this window, especially if you are still used to the Windows XP and later Start menus, which has all of those features somehow, which you can see in my host PC. But the Start menu is a bit more primitive and out of date, but you can still shut down the system from here. Click on Start, then this window menu will pop up, then drag your mouse, click on Shutdown. In the drop down, make sure that shutdown is selected. If it's set to reset, no, restart, I mean, or log off, select Windows 2000, shutdown sounds, no. Select shutdown from the drop down, then click on OK, and then when you've done that, you should be able to clean the junk files from the virtual machine. I think you can also do that. And that's how to install Windows 2000 on Oracle VirtualBox. And that's how the video looks. I'll also show you another video about installing the Windows 2000 extended kernel, but sorry for not showing it in this video, but I used to mean it in this video in the intro, but hopefully I will show you how to install extended kernel on Windows 2000, and that's my next video is going to be about. And that's how to install the operating system, and how to, and goodbye, see you in the next video.